Kathy Doherty, back in the garden. It's been a while. I've had a few technical difficulties with making videos that I hope I've resolved at this point. But also it's just been May and June on the farm, which is always sort of a fire hose of insanity coming at me between planting the garden and dealing with chickens and lots of chickens and selling greens and harvesting and trying to keep up on everything. So having to prioritize doing that rather than making videos. But I thought I would take a few minutes this morning. It's Sunday morning, kind of misty out, and we're about to have some bad weather. But I thought I'd take a few minutes and just show you some of the garden. Like not the vegetable garden, but the flower garden, which I haven't shown you much of yet. And there's a reason for that. I'm standing here in the shade garden, you kind of see it behind me. But you'll notice that there's a little bit of construction going on back there. Let me show you. This big pile here is a pile of sand covered with a tarp because of the rain. And over here, you'll see there's kind of a big gap in the shade garden. And we are in the process, or will be tomorrow, of swapping out our boiler for the house from an oil-fired to a propane boiler. And unfortunately, because of the way the house sits and the way the basement is, this is where the propane tanks are going to have to sit. And so we had to dig a trench to the house for the gas line. And tomorrow we will have the propane company come in and do the work. So in a couple days we'll have 2 big propane tanks here, and I can get to work on disguising them with more plantings. Not ideal, but it's a situation we were kind of pushed into, so we'll make the best of it. And I'll be sure to show you what I come up with for disguising those tanks. I have some ideas, and we'll see what works out. Anyway, so let me show you around the shade garden, which is looking pretty lush right now, and I still have some work to do in here, but let me show you what's going on. The shade garden sits on the west side of our house underneath this big maple, which was here when we bought the property. It's pretty much the only tree we've left standing near the house, mainly because it's just a beautiful tree and it casts such lovely shade. And we sit here in the afternoon and in the summer and enjoy the coolness of the shade. So it was a perfect opportunity to do a shade garden, which honestly is my favorite type of gardening. Let me show you. I love this combination. It was somewhat unintentional. Lady's mantle, a beautiful yellow-edged hosta, an aralia. I will try to get the proper name for that yellow stuff in the middle here for you. And then more yellow-tinged hostas. I just love this combination of foliage and color. And then moving on into some Roseanne geraniums, and then some other lower growing perennial geraniums that were on the property that I rescued. More hostas. I love hostas. Some multicolored ajuga and some variegated Solomon seal, which I was so excited to get this year. And then this mass of green here are foxgloves that seeded wildly from some foxgloves I found alongside the road last year. And so all of these are baby foxglove plants, which I'm going to dig up and plant around the rest of the garden, probably mostly up this way, so that next year we have beautiful foxglove blooms like this all over. And then I'll have to fill this area in with something else. And again, more hostas, some heucheras, more hostas. Now, living in New Hampshire, we are loaded with deer. And hostas are basically deer candy. So how do I keep the deer off my hostas? Well, some years it's just luck. I've been very lucky. But other years I've lost the hostas for the season. They just come and mow them down. And so a couple of years ago, I read about, was looking for quick solutions to keeping deer out of gardens. And I found that putting posts up and then putting fishing line, several strands of fishing line across, is enough to keep them out of the garden, especially in sort of a confined space garden like this where it's not wide open. They can't see the fishing line at night and they bump into it and it scares them off. So I haven't put it up yet this year because it's just been one of those years and I've been lucky so far, but I will put it up soon and just surround this side of the bed with the fishing line and posts, and because that's the direction they come from when they feed at night, is from up the hill here, and then they go down that way and they kind of browse. So hopefully I'll be able to keep them out this year and spare my hostas. Coming back to the beginning of the shade garden and going on the inside of the seating area, you'll see there's more Roseanne geraniums and more hostas. And then we have this big patch of sweet woodruff, which I just love because it covers the ground with a lovely soft carpet. And they have these little tiny white flowers in spring, which are somewhat insignificant, but they're cute. Painted ferns, more hostas filling in. And actually, this little sprig I just planted, a couple of them actually. This is yellow waxy bells, or, and I'm gonna probably pronounce this wrong, it's either Carangashoma palmata or Carangashoma. Carangashoma? I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyway, I'll put it in the description. Anyway, it's about a 4-foot tall, shrubby perennial that'll have beautiful little yellow flowers that hang down under the foliage. And I've been searching for this for years and finally found a grower that had reasonably priced small cuttings. So we'll have to watch this space and see how this little plant grows. So more hostas, more sweet woodruff, brunnera, and going up under the maple, we have more hostas, lots more hostas. And this is the part of the garden that I gave you a glimpse of in an earlier video with the regular Solomon seal and hostas and bleeding hearts, which are about to go by. More ferns and this adorable miniature Solomon seal, which I'm so excited about. Now the area of the shade garden at the top of the wall up the hill is still a work in progress. I have lots of Solomon seal and hostas, and there's actually some stilbe up there that got buried by the hostas and the Solomon seal that I'm going to have to dig out and bring down here where they can be seen. They're sort of small and they're getting lost in the sea of green up there. Yeah, so a lot more work to do in the shade garden, but it's coming along. It's always a work in progress, isn't it? Coming around the border here, we have some Jacob's ladder, some beautiful grasses, hostas, more lady's mantle, and the construction site. And then here's Annabelle. Let me tell you about Annabelle. This is an Annabelle hydrangea that was first bought by a very dear friend of mine, Wendy. Hi, Wendy. Long time ago, when we both lived in the same town in Western Massachusetts. It was at her house, and when she got a new job in another city, she had to sell her house. So I asked her for Annabelle that she had planted in her garden. And so we dug it up and put it in my garden. And a few years later, I also relocated to New York, upstate New York. And so I dug Annabelle up and took her with me to New York, and she lived in our gardens there. And then a few, 8 years later, we're getting ready to move to New Hampshire and had to sell the house. And I didn't want Annabelle to stay with the house. So I dug it up and brought it over to my mother-in-law's house, where she lived for about a year until we bought the farm here. And then I dug her up and brought her here to New Hampshire, and here she is. And so Annabelle will always be with me as a reminder of my friend Wendy, who has since relocated far away, and I don't see her often enough. So Wendy, this one's for you. Behind Annabelle, up the hill toward the barn, right now is kind of a jumble of various perennials and unfortunately weeds that I just haven't gotten to this year, which I'm planning to make a concerted effort in the next month to dig this out and rearrange. But this is all part of the massive reorganization of the rest of the border, which I'm not going to show you in this video, but I plan to get maybe another cutting of Annabelle up here on the hill, along with some shrubs. And then there's another project that involves the land right around the barn that will be coming soon. Well, that's it from the shade garden for now. Stay tuned to this space to see what happens with the propane tanks over the coming weeks. And I'll be sure to do more videos and more explanations of all the projects that I have planned for the perennial borders. I'd like to leave you with a short little video that I took last year when this shade garden was basically brand new and the perennial borders were all cleaned up and ready for the garden tour. It gives you an idea of what the garden used to look like, and so you can see how it changes as I dig stuff up and move stuff around and come up with a new plan for the garden. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.